Hey, it's Minute Book Reports, and how do you pronounce this word? I recently received a comment that pointed out that I was pronouncing the name of the children in a series of unfortunate events incorrectly, and I know that the show pronounces it as Baudelaire. And in my videos, and probably for the next all my videos, the way that I'm going to pronounce it is Baudelaire. And I just wanted to make a video to sort of discuss the reasons why I pronounce it like that, and if in case anyone asks me that in the future, I can just point them to this video. But I think it also brings up an important point about how do we learn how to pronounce names or words or places that we're unfamiliar with? And that's what this whole discussion got me thinking about. So the reason why I pronounce it Baudelaire rather than Baudelaire is because when I was reading the books, I did not watch the show at first. So as soon as I'm reading the books, I have to figure out what this word is pronounced as. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, what word is closely associated with the word Baudelaire in terms of how it's spelled, right? And the word that I could come up with was Vaude-ville. And Vaude-ville is not a common word, but I think it's an old French word, which kind of reminds me of Baudelaire. And so in pronouncing the word Vaude-ville, broken up into two syllables, sort of spelt the same, that I'm looking at that word Vaude-ville and I'm like, oh, okay, two syllables, Vaude and ville. So I'm thinking when I see the word Baudelaire, I'm thinking, oh, it's spelt very similar. I think they have the same French origin, possibly. So I'm thinking, okay, the name is Baudelaire. And I know that the word Baude, B-A-U-D, is its own word, like Baude. And you just add Baude with the E, which I would assume would be silent, just like the letter E at the end of lair is also silent. So as I'm trying to construct how to put together their last name, again, doing this rather quickly in my mind, I'm just thinking, okay, that makes sense. Vaude-ville, Baudelaire. Makes sense to me. But I do know that if you look at the Old French of the word vaudeville, it is broken up actually into three syllables, which makes sense because in the French, I think they pronounce it Vau-de-ville. That's three syllables. But the thing is, we don't say Vau-de-ville when we're talking about vaudeville, at least in American English. That's not how we pronounce it. And so I would never say Vaude-ville. And so why would I say Baudelaire? And I know that it makes sense now because the Netflix show, that's how they pronounce it. And so everyone hears that. And so that's how they know how to pronounce it. But if you didn't hear the Netflix show, how would you pronounce that word? I'm familiar with the sound of beau, as in like beau, like B-E-A-U. So I would assume that if you wanted to pronounce Baudelaire as Baudelaire, having that beau sound, that you would spell it with B-E-A-U-D-E-L-A-I-R-E. That would make the most sense to me. This got me thinking about how do we learn how to pronounce words, and a lot of times it's phonetically, and there's been times where I didn't know how to pronounce a particular name or a place, and there are great examples of this on this YouTube channel, I'm sure, but it's an interesting way on how we acquire language, how we know how to pronounce these words. And I think that's the bigger discussion in all of this. Whether you pronounce it Baudelaire or Baudelaire, or you cannot pronounce Hermione because you don't know how anyone says it. And when you read it in the book, it looks like Hermione, which makes sense because that's what it looks like. That's how it looks like. But I think that the main thing to get out of this is, how do we acquire language? How do we learn how to pronounce words? And we hear it, and then we know how to say it. And if no one says it, then we don't know how to pronounce it. And the only way that people can say it is if people are talking about it. So I hope that this sort of explains why I pronounce it as Baudelaire. And I really appreciate that comment, by the way. And I'm sure I will probably get more comments, or people are thinking that as they're watching some of these videos, and I'm sure they're gonna think about that in the future. And so at least I wanted to make a video that not only explained why I pronounce it as Baudelaire, and I will continue to pronounce it as Baudelaire, but also to bring up this whole idea of how do we learn how to pronounce words that we're unfamiliar with, especially names and places. How do we acquire that sound? Because sometimes you can't do it phonetically. So thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.